Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Focus on Liberia Tough Talking Thursday. In today's edition, we will be talking about money in politics, big money in politics, and we're talking about the 2023 presidential and legislative elections in Liberia, the impact of big money or the lack thereof in the 2023 elections. The central question is, will money be the decisive factor in this year's in the 2023 elections? We know that historically incumbents have used money and the national resources to sort of expand their base, so sort of put out their message. So they've used money to do those things that other competitors have no access to. So from the look of things, the incumbent, we think, will use the national coffers to fund his campaign. In fact, George Weah, the president of the Republic of Liberia, and his close associates have begun using government funds and money from government resources, quite frankly, to fund some of the elections that we've seen already. For instance, in Lofa County recently. We also know that Cummings has a deep pocket. So Weah is not without competition. Cummings is a former Coca-Cola executive, and we know that it is a successful one as such. We know that he has deep pocket. So what would that mean for the Alternative National Congress in the 2022 elections? Mr. Boakai, a leading candidate in the 2023 race, has told journalists last year that he's living on loans. So so people see him as broke, and so is this a disadvantage for him? I know he was being honest. He was probably being honest to sort of put his condition out there. But that can be a negative, knowing Liberian politics for what it is. And lastly, Councillor Tiawan Gongolo. The consensus for many is that he has a good message, a really good message, but he does not have money. What factor would that play in his aspiration to take George Weah's seat? With me to discuss all of this, and also there is an election law, believe it or not, a very good election law in Liberia. Uh, you know, this law is it is it observed? Is it something that why is nobody prosecuted? Why is no political candidate prosecuted for violating this law? Because we see violations each and every day. So with me to discuss these issues, uh, first is our chief political analyst from the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Wilma Wetty Cooney. Mr. Cooney, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Mohammed. Happy to be here always.
Mr. Cooney is the proponent of the one-round theory. He believes that George Weah is going to win in the first round of next year's presidential election. Mr. Cooney has met with the president. He has told the president that he is the proponent on this platform. Um, with me also to discuss these issues is my brother, Ahmed Sharif, from the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Ahmed is FOL's governance consultant. Ahmed, welcome to Job Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Mohammed. I'm happy to be here as well.
So, Ahmed, I want to go to you first. We know that there is a law, right, governing the conduct of Liberian elections. Specifically now, we're talking about money, right? There is, I believe, in 2014, there was a legislative reform of that 1986 election laws, right? So there are laws on the books that govern the conduct of elections, including, the equitable distribution of resources around elections. So I want to ask you historically, before we get all of that, historically, what do you what will you tell us about the impact of big money historically in Liberian presidential elections? Has it been an advantage to incumbents, or has it not mattered?
Well, it has been uh, an unfair advantage to incumbents. And this is a phenomenon that is across Africa. Actually, it's in African politics. Political corruption is a big practice where incumbents see themselves as essentially owners of the state's resources, and so they dish out state resources at will. And also flaunt laws that they flaunt the rules, and because this big man syndrome in across the continent, in Liberia specifically. I mean, you've read and have, we all read about President Tutman, how he bamboozled his opponents and how he used public funds essentially to get his way around. What it's to fund PROs, the so-called public relations officers, to bring news to him. What I was President Doe in the 1985 elections, essentially bought votes and some the Doe coins across the country during that time, on top of being a military person and all of that comes with it. We've also seen, I mean, in more recent time, where in Liberia, when President Taylor was president, people said that the central bank was essentially in President Taylor's bedroom, right? So that's where the money was. That's where everything that money did was decided, and people just dish out money, distributed money to gain advantage. So money corrupts politics, and the bad thing about it is that political corruption really delegitimizes the quality of leadership that Liberia gets, that a nation gets when there's an unfair, playing field. Really, when the playing field is not balanced at all, it's not playing at all. And what does that is people who have authority over budgets, authority over the national cake, they can essentially make decisions about resources. On top of money, they use actual assets, state assets. They'll use vehicles, they will use buildings, they will use anything that belongs to the people, public funds, public asset, public resources to their advantage, and therefore really diluting the field. So in such an environment, no election is free and fair. No election is legitimately won under those circumstances. If an incumbent were to win elections, engaging in those sort of dubious practices.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Mr. Cooney, so the incumbent, Mr. George Weah, is your candidate, and you are a big supporter of the Coalition for Democratic Change, the ruling coalition for democratic change of George Weah. You've seen the massive uh, use. It's almost as some would say cash violence. It's almost use of cash to get their message across. I mean, these guys can speak one sentence without saying, I pledge 2 million, I pledge this amount, I pledge that amount. So, to what extent that the CDC now is going to rely on this sort of, exorbitant use of resources that was earned through illegal means?
Well, let me say a couple of things. We are a public platform. A lot of people listen to us, and what we say is important. And so sometimes we have to hedge what we say, uh, like presenting it in a conclusive way. from where I said I don't have any evidence that the CDC is using any illegal money. Maybe you have that evidence. I don't have any evidence that any official of the CDC is using ill-gotten wealth to advance their political agenda, to communicate their political message. I don't have that evidence. So, I mean, it could be a speculation, but maybe it need to be stated in that context instead of presenting it as we already have, a prima facie evidence that this is what the party is doing. But having said that, Sheriff, you cannot divorce money from politics. In a democracy, you cannot divorce money from politics. Those of us that have even put ourselves forward for community leadership in the various organizations, you will see that you need money, to advance your campaign. You need money to communicate your message. And even in the United States, you need money to transport your voters where people are gainfully employed. In certain situations, there will be people that will come to you and say, you know what, Mr. Kony, I want to vote for you, but you got to pay my chapter membership due. So all of these things. But if you take it to the larger American level, I mean, what the politicians do, they fundraise every day, every time. After every election, it's fundraiser. Even if somebody says something about them, it becomes a vehicle for fundraising. From the Mar-a-Lago search, he's fundraising off of it. So basically what I'm saying, you cannot divorce money from politics. Money will be an essential part of politics. The question for me is, in our Liberian setting, how is money used? Who uses money? And we have a history. Agman made a reference to some of the historical aspect of it. But even before we come to the judge, we have time. Let's go to Madam Salif. There were information, again, that in fact, leaders in the sub-region were raising money for Madam Salif. President Obasanjo, all of these leaders were sending money to her. And even in the 2017 election, where she was not a candidate, some of the tension, information have it that some of the tension between she and Mr. Boyka is that a foreign African leader has sent some contribution for Mr. Boyka.
Do you have evidence? Do you have evidence of this?
This is why I'm saying some information have it. I'm not saying conclusively. I'm saying according to information, according to news that being spread was that some foreign leader contributed to Mr. Boyka and Madam Salif used her leverage to step on that contribution. That is, that exacerbated some of the conflict between she and Mr. Boyka. Now, for me, the concern is what is the impact of money? Money does have an impact on election, don't get me wrong. But in situations where the message is compelling, where the candidate is compelling, irrespective of the money, irrespective of what money say, the voters will always have their say. In most recent time, the CDC was in opposition for 12 years. They were not in government, but because people believe in their message, people believe in the institution, the CDC got elected. And then let's fast forward to Darius DeLong. If we think money could solve all of the problem, the message during DeLong's time favors DeLong. So despite the fact that you had the ruling party that had a candidate in their race, and to what, despite the speculation by many people that the ruling party was spending a lot of money, DeLong got elected. So I'm not discounting the impact of money. I'm just saying in situations where the candidate is perfect, where the cause is perfect, money may not have the kind of influence we're talking about. Even in the 2020 senatorial election, the CDC was an incumbent government, fielded candidates in all the 15 counties. What was the result? Did money make the CDC to win the senatorial race? No. So yes, money does have a role in politics, but let us not give it an outside influence that we want to give it here, because we've seen situations where in the face of money, voters always they speak their mind.
Yeah. So again, just a brief question this time around. Do you think that the political playing field in terms of the balance of resources, do you think that the playing field is leveled because the election law clearly is intended to create a balanced playing field. Do you think that is the case right now under the CDC led government? Are they ensuring that that happens?
But the opportunity is there. The opportunity is level for people that support their political party to come up with, the opportunity is there for them to do so. There is no limitation. There is no prohibition. If you talk about level, there is nothing inscribed in the law that all the parties got to be on this level financially. No, I don't think we have such a law. We don't have such a law. So the strength of your financial muscle will be dependent on the support that you get from your partisans or from your party. So we don't have a fixed law that all the political parties must have $2,000. We don't have such a law. But people will be contributing to political parties. You see Mr. Cummings here, he's seeing the impact of money. He comes here to the diaspora every time he's raising funds. I hear you raising 200,000. There are some instances where they say he has raised 300,000, 100,000. So let political parties get out there and make their organization vibrant. Let it work and make their organization vibrant. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm saying that let us not give this outside road to money, because where the message is clear, where the vision is clear, where the people believe in the leader, let they believe in George Weah. In 2017, money didn't play a role. You find in La Bronco, they were printing their own T-shirts to vote for Weah. They stood in a sycamore tree for years because they believe in Weah. So basically what I'm telling you, if a leader comes along, if they believe in you, they believe in your platform, yes, money has a role, but hey, money is not everything in politics. The message, the vision, the candidate, they all matter.
Thank you. Ahmed, do you share that view? Because one of the things that Mr. Kunin mentioned there is that there is no such law that sort of level the playing field. I think the law stated something to that effect. You cannot use the national resources, whatever it is, as an incumbent to fund your campaign unless access is granted to other competitors as well. Can you elaborate on this if you have any more information than I have previewed there?
Well, actually, your preview is accurate, Mohammed. Actually, there is a law. The law doesn't say, so the new election law, you referenced the 1986 election law that got revised, I believe it was 2014, yes. just before the 2017 election. Under the new election law, although it doesn't, and I'm not, I have to take a look at some of the specific provisions there, but just the sort of overarching principles of what I read is that, and just like in the U.S. and other countries, right, the law regulates campaign finance. Yes. And it gives the electoral management body, which is the National Elections Commission, the authority to audit political parties and to oversee how much money or how money is infused in the electoral politics. So what happens is they regulate foreign contributions, they regulate foreign interference, they regulate public corporations, they regulate multinational corporations that are paying loyalty to the state through an incumbent administration, and the law prohibits, direct contributions from such companies coming, say, to a candidate who has some kind of sway over what a company does in the country, essentially conflict of interest. So there are laws that are on the books in Liberia today that if they were followed, if they were enforced, actually the level playing field, the playing field will be leveled. It will be plain, right? But it's not. What we know is that, and Mr. Kuning may say, oh, listen, and where's the evidence? Just give me the evidence. Just give me the evidence. This is we're Liberians, we're Africans. We know how these things work in our country, how they're working. People are saying, it's okay if you store, as long as you spend it on the people you invested in your country, and that's fine. and that's democracy, right? People are saying, oh, we'll put in the budget next year. Oh, we'll put in the budget. Oh, Yula will put in the budget. So what do you think the narrative there is? The narrative is, listen, we have access to state resources. We can solve your problems that we couldn't solve through governing. We will take your money and bring it back to you and give you tokens, hand out bags of rice, hand out T-shirts, and fix, Palava Hut and build community centers and fix, just build little bridges in here and then. That's the development. That's why you should vote for us. Listen, this discussion tonight, I don't believe is about necessarily whether money is bad in electoral politics. That's not what it's about at all. It's about whether somebody can use state resources illegally and to their advantage. All right, and how much money can one receive to their political campaign, to their political party, in a political party to fund their campaign, and how is the electoral management body regulating that sort of thing. So we're trying to enforce or at least encourage democratic principles by creating opportunities for competition. Because if you use state funds and if you corrupt the political process, like I said in the beginning, it corrupts the quality of leaders that get elected. It corrupts the type of governance that people receive. It corrupts the type of services that people receive. So the question is now whether Mr. Cummings has money, or whether President we at some point didn't have money and people voted for him. Of course, political scientists and election campaign consultants will tell you that issues votes. There are votes that are revote votes. There are votes that people vote not for a particular candidate but against another candidate. So the reasons why voters vote a certain way in Liberia, when I was there and during the 2017 election, I heard people say during that circle, we'll eat your money and not vote for you because you know. So they form all these little groups, like Mr. Corning has formed his own group, right? And these groups will get honorarium. They will get some sort of the contribution from the district, because the political parties have these arrangements where you have various committees. It's so organized. It's amazing how it is organized. If that's how everything else was systematic and organized in Liberia, I tell you, our problems will be minimal, right? They can, at the snap of the finger, they can communicate from headquarters to the community level because they have community chair, they have zonal chair, they have this chair and that county chair and that women's chair, youth chair. So they do coordinate, they do communicate in that fashion. So what happens? You are incumbent, you have access to resources, you distribute vehicles, you give cheese vehicles, you give motorbikes to district education officers, you give vehicles to county education officers. What are you doing? You're buying on, you're exercising undue illegal influence for election and campaign advantage.
Thank you.
Okay, let me make some clarification here. Because if the issue is the illegal use of state fund for campaign, then we should close this session because nobody support that. I don't think there is anybody on this platform that support the idea that public funds should be used illegally for political purposes, for campaign purposes. I don't think that's the context of the discussion. I think the context of the discussion is what impact does money play in elections, and do people have equal playing field when it comes to that very important aspect of elections? And when I said that the opportunity was there, you see, Liberia is a country, we don't have public campaign finance law, because the kind of equal playing field you're talking about will be one that will be created by public campaign finance law.
Actually,
that says that says that each presidential campaign will be financed by this amount of public dollars. I don't know we have that law. I don't know whether we have such a law to say that each presidential candidate, once you are qualified as a presidential candidate, this is the public purse that we're going to give to you. If we don't have such a law, then for you to talk about things being equal, I don't think it can be. The chances or the impact that parties will have will depend on how do they raise their own funds, how do they mobilize financial resources. Now, talking about the illegal use of public funds, again, I don't speak to that. There could be a speculation that people are doing that, or people have done that in the past. I don't have the evidence for that, so I can't speculate to that. But even if that were to be true, I've given you instances where the incumbent has been in elections, you see, and lost elections despite what people believe that they were spending. So all of these things, I think it is really a grand design to lay the foundation, that we will never accept any election result once the incumbent is part of the process and win. Now, to suggest that the president of the country should not perform his constitutional duty because an election is coming is absurd. All of the things you're talking about that the president distributing, those things are appropriated by the national legislature. It was the legislature that appropriated $15 million to enable the president to undertake commitments that he had made on his country tour. Now, to suggest that the president should sit down and don't do anything, he should, carry on any of those things because election is coming, that complete absurdity.
Yes, not.
These are things people who don't have message, people who don't have vision, they propose. Madam Sally was president all in her life after election. She didn't stop doing government work because she was coming for election. It sometimes boggles my mind.
So, Mr. Kuni,
these unreasonable expectations that we didn't place on other people, but we want to place them on other people.
So, Mr. Kuni, the president goes to Nimba County, right? And, this was after the vehicles, way after these vehicles were given to the chiefs. So the chiefs, a cross-section of the chiefs in Nimba County said to him, look, we're not even talking about 2023 right now. We're talking about 2029. And we're going to we're trying to make sure that, whatever they put in there about you serving for 12 years, no, we don't even like that. You see, this is the beginning of autocracy. This is the beginning. This is how, Tubman started this whole thing of just, but let me finish my question. So it used to be every 2 years. How many times have I said that on this platform? I've said that over and over. It used to be, it was every 2 years, and then it moved to every 4 years. And then when you got to Barkley moved it to 8 years with a term limit. I believe 8 years was the limit. So if you serve that 8 years, 4 and 8, and you're done. So Tubman then decided that after some time, there was even no opposition now because, every year he was the only candidate. And people decided that instead of these term limits, there should be no more term limits. So they removed the term limits. And so if they're saying the same thing now, are we not going back to the same undemocratic path? And to Ahmed's point, what is the reason why the president is giving these cars and motorbikes, right? He knows, he understands that 2023 is coming up. We all know 2023 is coming up.
Mohammed, I need to respond.
One second.
Yeah, Mohammed, I'm laughing because you really making a funny case. The question is, how is the democracy jeopardized? The president is elected to serve the people. The president is elected to do the will of the people. The president is using money legally appropriated by the national legislature for him to work. So if the legislature approve a project to say, a road should pass through Kabada and give the money for that, and the president takes that money and complete that road, you want to hold the president responsible for what a gratified citizen of Kabada says? That's all, Mr. President, you completed the road, I think you should be president. Is that what you really seriously want to hold the president responsible for? Because he's doing his job? I can't understand that argument. The president is not going around telling people that I want to be your cancer term limit. No, he's approving projects that are approved by the national legislature. So because of election, he shouldn't work. He should just sit down. Then you come here and say, oh, the president can't work. He can just sing buka. He can just dance buka. Then when he work again, oh no, he's seeking vote. What you want the president to do? He building roads. He building schools. He building hospitals. He building solar panel. He doing all of these things. He giving mobility to local chiefs. He giving mobility to educational officers. He shouldn't do that. Then when he said that, he said, no, he can't do nothing. He doesn't book out. You know, that's a paradox.
Ahmed, what's your response?
Look, Sheriff, listen, when Mr. Corning, when you make these types of unreasonable generalizations and arguments, and people say it's dishonest argument, you get offended. That's not how governance happens in our country. I'm not saying if the legislature appropriated funds for a specific project, that fund shouldn't be undertaken, right? We know political projects, we know impulsive projects that have taken place, and these are all electoral campaign projects. If the legislature appropriated funds, and this fund is in the budget, right? Of course, it's the executive's job to implement those governance responsibilities. I wouldn't be the one coming here telling you that shouldn't be the case, right? But some of these, when it's convenient for you, you say, where's the evidence? No, when it's convenient for you, you make the argument, you generalize without any evidence. When it's not convenient for you, you ask for the evidence. So to me, that is not intellectual honesty at all. I mean, you cannot say the vehicles that were distributed or motorbikes that were distributed, all of those were money that were appropriated in the budget, that the president was the one who was supposed to then take them to go distribute them the way it happened. We're just saying, listen, you can do well. When you do well, nobody is going to stop you from winning re-election. And that's what we want. We want the best for our country. Anybody who occupies the office of president, we respect that person. We honor that person. Why? Because we respect that office. And if the president succeeds, we're happy because the country succeeds. Our people will do well. But if there is misrule, or if there are these things that are happening that are unfair, that are extra constitutional, these things that are happening that really, so Mohammed, for example, you see individuals who, prior to going to office, this put president we are aside. Because people say, he was a rich man, he played football, whether he had money or not, it's not for me to say. I don't know how much money he had. But
you didn't have much.
You have individuals who barely could even afford a transport fare from Cinco to Central Monrovia. Now these people are rotten rich. These people are constructing universities on their own accounts. These people are undertaking massive capital projects on their own accounts. Now we don't have to be rocket scientists here to know that, listen, this is plundered funds. These are state resources, right? At least we can extrapolate from what we knew before, what we now know, and see the president's opulence lifestyle and the engagement in the public space. We can speak to that, because what happens is our people are the ones whose back are pushed against the wall, right? The people say, oh, listen, there's inflation everywhere all over the world. Yes, but other countries are actually doing something about their inflations. They're doing their inflationary rate. They're doing something about the economic conditions of the people in the country. All we are asking is our people who are governing, our president, our leaders, they should govern. They should not just appropriate money to themselves. We saw the legislature paying themselves $30,000 here, $30,000 here, whereas people don't even have food to eat. They put on the table. So this is what we're talking about. We're not saying a politician doesn't have the right to campaign. In fact, 60% of the candidates' time is spent raising funds in this country. They're on the phone, they go everywhere, they raise funds. Even though they do that, there's still regulation, there's still law that regulates who you get money from, how much money you get, how that money is spent. You have to report that. There's not that transparency in our system. So we're speaking to these things without attacking any particular person and and just trying to score some kind of political point here. It's just a matter of what is happening, and we believe that those are not democratic tenets, and we want our people to engage in better governance practices. That's all.
No, quickly to a point, because Ahmed is not going to get off on the point that he stated. I mean, we can be dancing around the field here. When you bring this issue, we expand on it, and you introduce another issue. Ahmed made specific reference to the president giving vehicles and other things to chief.
I did.
And I'm telling you definitively, you're talking about evidence. I'm telling you definitively that in the budget of Liberia, there was $15 million approved by the national legislature, empowering the president to do that. In fact, when the president presented those things, and there was the president name on it, the criticism was, why are you putting your name on it when this is public funds? So you can't have it both ways. I'm simply telling you, the office of the president is not going to shut down because there is an election coming. The president will still remain president. He will still implement projects approved by the national legislature, whether you call it political projects or not. But these are the things approved by the legislature. I'm making specific reference to your mention of the cars because for sure, I know that the financing of those cars and the Jeeps are the product of budgetary appropriation that was given to the president. And the president implemented. So
So what does he gain? What is the return? What is the return on that?
You can go to other officials who you believe never had anything, they never had a penny, and they're doing grandiose things. That's another argument. But even if they never have penny, are you measuring what they're doing with where they are today, or because they never had penny 5 years ago?
No, we're looking at that income. No, Mr. Coney. We're looking at people's, if you even talk people's salaries, we know how much ministers are paid, right? They did harmonization, right? So that there will be fair pay and fair job and job classification and all of that. We know how much money a minister makes, a deputy minister makes, and an assistant minister makes. We know how much money a representative make and a senator make, although I believe they're way overpaid, right? Even with that, somebody cannot be the one building the hospital, building the university, and they don't have a company. They're not like multi-millionaires that we know. They have these private ventures. They are entrepreneurs. They engage. If you have that, you have your wealth, and you're doing your private projects with it, and it's benefiting the public. That's fine. That's well and good. But we're not saying when you didn't have a car before, now you're official, you should still be poor. Though we're looking at the income you make and the lifestyle and the kinds of things that you're projecting out there. It doesn't match the income you make, and so we question you. What's the source of income? So we're speaking to like broad practices in the country, and we may give snippets of examples here and there to demonstrate some of that point. You can take and score a political point and say, oh, there's money in the budget here. But I'm saying political corruption is real in Liberia. We cannot whitewash it. If we want the country to move forward, even under President George Weah, if you win second term or whatever, listen, political corruption is terrible. He would not succeed the way he would have liked to succeed because of the level of corruption and things. And if they're not stamped down, I'm telling you, the people will continue to suffer, and we don't want that. So we all care about Liberia. I believe that's why we're here.
Mr. Coney, thank you, Ahmed. Just before we get off of this point now, Miguel, you know Miguel, right?
Mm-hmm.
The presidential affairs minister. Was he a wealthy man before he took over that position, 4 years ago?
Absolutely.
How wealthy was he?
Absolutely not. McGee said to you that he got hard by his own admission. But let me look. Let's stipulate to some stuff here. I'm not for political corruption. None of us here. I don't believe that people should be corrupt. I don't believe people should use state resources to enrich themselves or to advance.
But you endorse a behavior that
I'm not endorsing any behavior.
A political corrupt practice.
I'm not endorsing any behavior. I'm not endorsing any behavior. I'm just saying that the issues we raise here are very interesting issues that need to be investigated by our people, that need to be investigated so that we can know. Look, I'm one of those. When I was president of EULA, I proposed the Asset Justification Act. I proposed that if you were not in government before, you didn't have anything, and you come to government, and within 1 year we start seeing your cars piling up, you should justify that asset.
Why are you not doing the same for Liberia?
I'm still doing it. I'm still for asset justification.
Why they're not declaring the assets? Why they refusing to
Listen,
report,
look, these things we got public position on it. I was for the suspension of public officials mentioned in audit until the audit completely cleared them. I was for asset justification. You don't have to commit a crime, but if you didn't have a car before and we make you assistant minister, and within 3 years your cars are building up, you have to justify that asset. We have to review your income. We have to know where you get the money from to get these things. I'm all for that, but we cannot selectively apply it. We can't forget when we're not in power and bring it up. When other people in power, that's something that we have to do. Public officials must be held accountable for public resources that come through their hand. And if you will left with me, I think one of the effective tools to fight corruption in Liberia is for public officials not to only declare their assets, but to also justify the assets that they acquire while they're in public service. I do that every year with the city of Philadelphia. I justify my assets every year. So that is the effective way to fight corruption in our country.
So you don't agree with what's going on with the CDC people? You don't agree with them on that part?
When you ask the question that way, you don't agree with what's going on with the CDC people.
I mean, I'm just putting it in simple Liberian English. I mean, okay?
Unless I understand what's going on, I can't say I agree. I don't agree. What I tell you, I don't agree with. I don't agree with the use of public funds illegally. I don't agree with it. So anybody that uses that, whether you're in CDC, whether you're in CPP, wherever you're in, I don't agree with that approach of people using public funds for their personal benefit. It doesn't matter who is in power. That's my principal position.
So I take it to mean that you disagree with McGill's exorbitant use of public funds to fund everything that he's doing, even his speech. If he's speaking, it doesn't say much. All his speech, subject, verb, everything.
So let's look at the
caveat. Money.
Let's look at the caveat. Let's take Maggie on his challenge. Maggie says that he has not used any cent of the public. Let's take Maggie up on a challenge. Let's open an investigation into Maggie and let's see where the facts take us before we can ask for condemnation. The mayor is saying categorically that he has not misused any public funds. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
Money. But even I've seen the money getting like brand for a good thing. Because Ali and I see them carrying it in Europe. Some point in the country, all government are in eligible interest. That's the money. But we tell no money, the school will go to our people there, go pay for the school invest. I can't pay how in one country invest. So I'm going to tell the money I carry to Ghana, correct? No. But one country get it on a minimum. I will take it from you, Gary. No. And I'll leave it here. Yes. The day God take me, I will carry her with me. No. Our grandchildren will kind of see the ones there, but what kind of looking for? They go book power there.
So I listened to that video. That giving the sensibility, the sensitivity of corruption to our people, I will not speak the way he spoke. But he said he spoke out of context. It's not what he said. So my thing is, he has flatly denied using public funds. Can we take him up on a challenge? Can we open an investigation to see? But I would not make that kind of statement.
So you believe? So you're suggesting there should be investigation into stuff like this? So you agree this is wrong?
I believe there should be an investigation into people that came to public service that acquire wealth. Let them justify their wealth. I believe that.
Thank you. And Ahmed, this is your point. What you saw in this video is a clear demonstration of what goes on. And it's not just him. You have Jefferson Koigi. You have others. right? It's not just him, but he just stands out.
Yeah,
You
he
know,
just he stands out, and you know, behind the scenes, I'm sure there's been a lot of pressure on him from the president, from other cabinet friends, that is making the government look bad with that kind of public statement amidst the abject poverty and hardship. Look, if a public official stands amongst a citizen, a group of citizens, confesses to illegally appropriating public funds, and justifying that as long as I bring it to I will give it to our people and distribute it to our people and that problem. Listen, that's it. I don't know if you can walk that back and say I've never taken public funds, and you know, after you've had some backpedaling and some pressure from high places, right? And I'm not even going to go there. To me, what that illustrates, there's a bigger problem and picture that statement that Mr. McGee made, and of course, it's something he believes, but is engaged in. I believe so, because he wouldn't have said it and seen people do it. He was responding kind of to criticism. People will say, "Well, they're both stealing the government money." So, but we come here and invest and build houses. You know, we go to Lofa, we build this, we come here, Bonkan. Why are they complaining, right? But Mohammed, a Liberian political campaigning is tokenism. Like what they do is they go to people and give them these handouts. The people don't need handouts. Govern well, create an enabling environment for private sector to thrive. Governments don't usually create jobs in no country, right? The private sector, how do you do that? You govern well. You create a buoyant economic environment so that we attract outside investors, so that we attract domestic investors and investment. Our people will be happy. Liberian people are intelligent people. They're educated people. They go to school. They work hard with their hands in agriculture, light manufacturing, and so on. Create those opportunities. Build the agricultural agro industry, you know, and opportunity for our people to succeed. They'll feed their kids. They'll send them to school. You don't need to come build little thing for them here and there and give them change. You say that problem. We bring it. We invest. Give money to our people. The research show that there's direct correlation between how campaigning is conducted, how candidates relate and perceive voters versus how they govern later, right? So if you came to the voter, you essentially purchase their vote, their support. You give them stuff and they voted for you. You have to recoup what you gave them. You're not going to focus on investing, on governing. You're not going to focus on bringing projects, bringing development, advocating for them if you are a legislator, or you know, even if you are a president. You're going to, you know, we spend a lot of our money, maybe my personal money, or money my friends gave me, or money I stole from the public. Now I gave it back to them. I need to essentially replenish that. That's what we're speaking against. These things they speak to bigger problems in the country. Can't you see? Liberia's not doing well. Hello, Liberia, Mr. Koenig is not doing well. It's not a personal vendetta or envy or hatred of the president, this one individual. I have told people many times that Mr. George Weah is an individual who has been incredibly blessed. You have to give it to this man. If you look at his history, what he has accomplished in his life, there are a lot of people who will not accomplish that tenfold in their lives. So we can't speak against that. But if you say, I want to be your president, and I want to be the one to form a team, you know, to fix our country, as they like to say, we are fixing it, president, we are fixing it, then fix it. Then form a team, a competent team. Be disciplined about it, right? Stop all these things that are happening, taking just living above the law and being extra constitutional. Stop that and do well. That's why we're saying this is not personal. The country is not doing well. If we're going at the rate we're going, you can look at all development index shows that 200 years from now, we'll more or less be where we are still. Maybe a few things will improve, but we'll more or less be where we are. Who wants that for their country? We can't bequeath that kind of country and this way of living to our children, our grandchildren.
Yeah. So
quickly, look. You go by the government themselves, the government itself tells you the difficulty that is in the country. No one here ever portrayed that everything is going well in Liberia. What we react to is the doomsday scenario that is being preached, that there is nothing improving in Liberia. What we recognize is that while there are things, there are challenges that in the country, let us also recognize the improvement that is being made. But to suggest that there is nothing going on in Liberia, so there is nothing improving in Liberia, and some of their statistics that they rely on, when you pull the statistics, when Liberia made improvement, oh, that one is not important. Transparency Index, it used to be one of the most quoted statistics. Liberia is doing so terrible. Yeah, Liberia is above Sierra Leone. Liberia is just below Ghana in the transparency index. You understand? Right now, our educational system in 2014, it was a mess. We getting report that our students are making incremental progress, passing the WAEC. They don't want us to know these things. All they want us to notice is everything that is wrong with Liberia, as if to say anyone ever argued that everything was perfect with Liberia. Everything is not perfect with Liberia. And for a long time, things have not been perfect with Liberia. And nobody has got the expectation that everything that's wrong with our country for almost 172 years will be fixed in a one-term presidency of any president, let alone judge we are of any president. You need sustained effort from administration to administration to remedy the problems that Liberia face. You go to condemn the roads. The roads are substandard. But if those substandard roads were built maybe decades ago, nobody would build them now. If those things were easier to do, Mohammed, they would have been done a long time ago. The Liberia that is so good that people so talk about, that was the Liberia of Broad Street, Monrovia, and the concession areas. That was that Liberia. You know, today we're talking about road construction. We're talking about electricity. We're talking about water. We're talking about all of these things that we never had. So it's not going to take one presidential term to fix it. The challenges are there, but when our country is making progress, let us acknowledge that progress and make our criticism. You compare our democracy to an autocracy, you know, and you wish for all these terrible things to descend on Liberia because you believe there is an autocrat. We have an autocrat in Liberia, but you have a certain member of the national legislature that rain insult on the president on a daily basis. Still, we have an autocrat in Liberia. We have an autocrat in Liberia. The national legislature is working on hinder. Some of the news I got about Sierra Leone today is that the Bio who is a darling here, because you know he's sometimes being praised. Bio who is the darling to some people here. Bio took his party people. His party people marched them to the National Assembly with 10 legislatures and put their own people there. Imagine the CDC doing that. Imagine, George, we are going to Capitol Hill, beating lawmakers, sending them home and putting seditions there. We don't have that kind of situation. So to wish this kind of thing to happen in our country because you disagree with the president, I think it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. You talk about Arab Spring. I talk about the Arab. What is the dividend of the Arab Spring? The Arab Spring.
But that's not what we're talking right now.
No,
we didn't bring that up.
A few leaders and it brought dictators.
Okay, yeah. You're not going to bring that sibling rivalry here now. We're not talking about that right now. Okay, so
why do you prefer all these bad things to happen to Liberia? Because if you think the government is corrupt, if you think the government is corrupt, organized politically. If you think there is misrule, organized politically. Let's go to the bottom line.
So, Mr. Cooney, the bottom line, what I gather from this discussion is that you do agree that there needs to be certain measures put in place, even as a staunch supporter of the CDC. You do believe also, I think, from what I gather from this discussion, the exorbitant display of wealth in the midst of poverty.
Yeah,
it's just not. It's very sinful. If I was preaching to a group of congregants, it's very sinful. Around you have hunger, you have diseases. In the midst of all of that, you have massive underdevelopment. In the midst of all of that, and there's wealth concentrated in the hands of a few people who just yesterday didn't have bus fare, and they are multi-millionaires. So I don't need anybody to explain this to me. I already know it's unfair. Quite frankly, it's sinful. It's
So,
devilish.
so this is what I believe. I believe that public resources should not be utilized by everybody by anybody for their individual gain. I believe we should strengthen our corruption fight. That we achieve two things. That once there is an audited report that accuses Mr. Cooney of any kind of mismanagement, Mr. Cooney must be suspended from his position until that audit findings of that audit is concluded. Number one. Number two, I believe in asset declaration, and I believe in asset, how do you call it, justification. It must be part of our corruption fight. When you in public service, you must declare your assets and you must justify the assets you acquire while in public service. Those are my core beliefs. I believe them yesterday, I believe them today.
All right, thank you. And so now we will move on to the next political candidates, the next person. The next is Mr. Boycott. Mr. Boycott believes, Mr. Boycott has said that, he's living on loans, right? He has said he's borrowed loans, right, to live off of. And from everything I've heard, I haven't done any sort of in-depth look at, his finances. But he has said that he is a poor person. He has said that, when he served as vice president for those 12 years, he didn't make much. And so he's poor. And so he's living off of loans. Why this may be something that, will be a political capital for him in the short term. But in Liberia, usually some people sit in the corner and say, well, I mean, the man's broke. We're going to vote. We're trying to vote for somebody who has money, right? He's broke. So let's talk about Boyka first. Ahmed, what do you think that, what attributed to a vice president who, after 12 years, is coming up to say that he is broke? I know it's not unusual, but he said he's broke.
Listen, Mohammed,
Is that a political asset?
Listen, let's first attack the mental model here that has gotten us to even ask that question. Well, you're a vice president for 12 years. You're supposed to be wealthy. You're supposed to have stolen public funds. You're supposed to have been corrupt. Look at you. You are no good. Yesterday you were a minister. Today you're standing looking for a taxi to go to town. You are good for now. That is the mental attitude. That is the mental model that we are operating under in Liberia. That is the very model that makes people to say to you, when you are talking to them about their campaign, they say, no, I can't raise funds. I can't be asking people to give me money. I cannot even, that's a bad PR for me, because people will say, well, the man get money, then you want to run for office. So you have to show that you're wealthy, that you are doing so well, that you have money, that you have built bridges, you sponsor football teams and things like that. You've done all kinds of things. Oh, now I'm running for office, right? So that you pay people off. When you run for office, you continue to corrupt. That's how we've been conditioned. Our country has been conditioned to think. Look, Mr. Boyka, I don't know a whole lot about his personal finances, and one thing we can judge by. That's what I judged the other people by a few minutes ago, and I said, listen, if you didn't have a lot of income, now you're undertaking major projects. Your lifestyle is you live in an affluent lifestyle and so on. We don't know the source of income. We don't see any private sources of your income. We have the right to question that. If you are a public official, if you are a public individual, right? So Mr. Boyka claims that his salary he made, over these years when he was vice president could not possibly continue to sustain him after he has left office. And his retirement perks that government should give him, he probably had to beg for it. Like there was something in the news, he had to go to court or something like that, right? So if the man says, I'm poor, I have to take loans, I have to reach out to my friends and relatives to give me handouts, to raise money.
Do you believe him?
Look, I do believe him because I don't see him living an extravagant lifestyle. I don't see him spending money willy-nilly, throwing money around. If you were doing that, I would ask, well, Mr. Former Vice President, I knew your salary when you were vice president. We knew your budget was a matter of public record. So unless you were corrupt and you appropriated that budget funds illegally to yourself, that's why you're spending now. Otherwise, your income, I don't care, you were vice president for 12 years, shouldn't allow you to live this kind of lifestyle and do these things. We would have questioned that. So because he's not living that lifestyle, it is evident that it's very possible. I'm not privy to the facts and details of it, but it's very possible that this is true. Baka is not going. In fact, one of the sort of as a political deficit for him that people talk about is that Baka is broke. This is the man people want to run for office, so that their criticism is that the people around him are using him as a vehicle to access power because the man's broke. This is the man doesn't have money to run campaigns on, to run the kind of campaign that you're supposed to run for president. And so that's one of the downsides of his political his public facing that as a politician, right? That is what people are criticizing him for. So the point is, Liberia, they will criticize you. If you are in office, now you're out of office, you don't have money, they say you must be a fool. You should have enriched yourself. So I'll leave it at that and hear what Kony has to say about it.
Mr. Kony, I know you're going to say you don't, I know you're laughing. I know you're going to say, you don't believe him, right? What proof do you have? If he says such, what proof do you have that he's wealthy? Because Ahmed said he doesn't see him, living this extravagant lifestyle that most of the CDC people are living now. He's not living that lifestyle, and we all see it. So what? If you say you don't believe him, what evidence do you have?
Why are you so anxious for me to say I don't believe the man? I never say I don't believe the man.
Because you say you don't believe.
No, that's the next thing that's coming. So I gotta.
That's because Ahmed saying you believe him. I don't have to be on the opposite side with Ahmed all the time.
Because you are on record.
Because we already know what's coming.
So not because Ahmed say he believes, do I with disbelieve? No. But look, there are some really bigger issues we need to discuss within. There's a very important question. Look, like I said, a lot of things happening in our country and a lot of things not happening. I remember one time I talked about reforming our electoral system. We have a system of Mohammed where we don't even have a criteria for somebody to be candidate. All you have to do is, I'm a presidential candidate and we're running behind you. You understand? If we had a real national criteria where someone can emerge to be candidate, whether it is signature requirement that will make you a viable candidate or some kind of requirement, my thing would be that once that candidate reach viable status, there should be some level of public funding that should be given to that candidate. If you meet that threshold, let's say to become president of Liberia, you need to have these number. I think in the United States, you got to appear on several state ballots for you to be a candidate. You don't have to do it the American way, but let's put in place some minimum requirement. So Wema Kuni doesn't leave from America today and become a presidential candidate overnight. You understand? And once we achieve that, then we can go to the public finance phase of campaign. That this person who has met these requirements need this level of public funding. then we'll not be asking the kind of question we have. Because Mr. Parker being a presidential candidate, we know maybe there's $2 million of public funding that will go to him, and any other candidate who may meet that requirement. But maybe we don't have that kind of law. I'm not too sure. I don't know the electoral law, but I know we may not have that kind of law. So this burden is being placed on candidates for you to come up with money to run. And if you don't come up with the money to run, our people will mock you. I agree with Ahmed. You work in public service, you don't steal, you're a stupid man.
Mhm.
You're the stupid man. I work with one of the most patriotic Liberian citizen, Dr. Joseph Seguano, who sacrificed for that country. And people say, oh, look at Guano, he taking taxi. They mock, people. So what I'm saying is, there's a serious problem. Like, Ahmed, to be honest with you, I don't know the Omer financial position. I don't know his position. I don't know him. I don't know his financial position. The only thing close to his financial position that came to my knowledge by way of public record is this Forbes publication. I don't know whether Ahmed has seen it, that listed the richest people in Liberia.
I've seen it.
And they say the Omer is the fourth richest man in Liberia.
I thought he wasn't on that list. The
Yeah,
current vice president is the fourth, I think, is on that list.
Yeah, he's on that list.
And
So I don't know how true that information is. I don't know. So I really don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I think the electoral law we're talking about, they say for the position of president, you have to have maybe like $1 million. They got, how do people raise this kind of money? I don't know. I remember 2005, 2011, Dr. Tipote was running. The man was going to Brewer, the man car broke down, and the people were laughing. Look at the man want to be president, he can't break down. So these are all problems. But I don't have any reason to doubt Ambassador Barker if he says he's broke, because really I have no clue as to his personal financial position. The only public information is that Forbes magazine. Whether it's true, whether it's not true, I don't know. It listed all our wealthy Liberians, including Mr. Weah, Mr. Benena Ure, Vanessa Sherman, even the late Dr. Sawyer is on that list. I didn't even know that Sawyer was a rich man until I saw that stuff. So I don't know how true is it. So maybe he is, or maybe I don't know.
So is it, Ahmed, is it a disadvantage for him now since he's broke? It doesn't seem that way though.
It doesn't seem
He's in
that
the top
way.
tier.
You see, it doesn't seem that way because the people that are around him, the Unity Party people, I think that they make up for that aspect. If that is a deficit, look, I was somewhere in a gathering in Minnesota here where Mr. Barker visited and spoke. Mr. Barker said that he has been living in the same house, I believe, since 1960 something or 70 something, right? And I've seen that. I've been to that house. I've been to Mr. Weir's house as well. And Mr. Barker stated that he has one small house on his farm in Bomi, and he has that other house in Monrovia. That's it. That, he worked for the Liberian people. He is open to be audited. He challenged everyone. He said anyone to point to any asset or ill-gotten wealth anywhere. And to this day, nobody has been able to refute that. So, but I don't know his financial position. I don't have any facts, only public records and public utterances. So.
Mr. Connie, do you have anything? Does he has an advantage or disadvantage because of it?
Well, because of my other view when it comes to money in politics, I believe money is not a do-all. I believe the candidate has a role. I believe the message has a role to play. I believe the circumstances of the time has a role to play. There are other variables. It's not just money alone.
You believe despite his living on loans, he can beat the CDC?
No, nobody can. Even if you are now on loan, you can't beat the CDC. Even if you are now on loan, even if he was a millionaire, let's say he was a millionaire, the CDC will still whip him in the first round. He or any other candidate will be defeated in the first round of the election.
Okay, Mr. Connie, thank you. So, let me at this time, maybe we'll just do comments, and then we'll take our first break, and then when we come back, we will begin to wrap up. We'll talk about Gonglo a little bit, and then we'll go to our Tabata session and wrap up. So, folks, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. And so at this time, I think it's we'll take our first break. We'll take our first break. So let's take our break and come back.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Come on. I have a lot of noise.
When I Ahmed dancing Buga,
I'm not dancing Buka, but I can dance Buka. You can dance Buka. I learned it from you. I can do the salute and all.
God. Let the moderator.
All right, let's read some comments here. Go ahead, Mr. Admin, please read the comments.
All right, put it on. Are you hearing me? So this is from Francis Ferguson, the People's President, George M. Weah Camp 2023. Natalie Collins says, thanks very kindly for the presentation tonight and the topic under discussion. Flomo Livingstone, Mr. Conning, political fundraising is different from a politician animating of corruption. I think it's trying to say amassing corruption. Emmanuel Jackson, the monetization of implementing developmental policies in Liberia and Sierra Leone are serious impediments for building democratic institutions. Flomo Livingston again, building hospital, having medication and well-trained doctors and nurses is another thing. I don't know what the reference there is. Fix electronics, somebody's under a moniker. We are in the biggest recession since the Depression. $20 million to make a solid run for president, according to Ability. So people are giving us the data we were looking for. Ashimo Fredericks, why did the president put $15 million in the budget? The legislature didn't just put it there. So, Mr. Conning, you have some justification and explaining to do there. And Diane Festus Zion said, this Conning guy is a paid agent for the CDC. Liberia Violence Awareness Movement. Thank you, Ahmed. I guess start to say, stick it to Mr. Conning. Great. David Cole, can you imagine having Mr. Conning as a police director or assistant? Or what a sad story it would be. That's not a fan of yours, Mr. Conning.
I know.
All right, Diane Festus again. Conning is talking with the both sides of his mouth. David Cole again. Mr. Conning, please, man, talking from both sides of your mouth. Blind to the facts. People say you're speaking on both sides, Mr. Conning. All right, Ashimo Fredericks again. But Mr. Conning, isn't that what seditions are doing? Being selective in the condemnations of corruption? Dolake Jonathan said, Tayo, we need not to take McGill's statement of denial of corruption because he publicly confessed to corruption. Dolake again, remember that McGill, the name has been nearly in everything concerning corrupt practices. Massa Colley, Mr. Conning, please list 3 projects in each county started by Weah and completed after 5 years of his leadership. I think that they're saying you said things the president was doing. Pro King students from private schools are doing well at their own accord. It has nothing to do with the government. Again, Mr. Wilmer Coney is the big disappointment. Where are the 3 missing boys? No justice for auditors, no justice for EPS officers. I see the intellectual stalwarts in the house. Greetings from Mohammed. Brother Ahmed. It's been a while since I think that's a brother there and friend. Those are your comments. Somebody's mic is on and there's some noises in the background, but those are the comments. Folks, Mr. Sheriff, back to you.
Ahmed, go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just reading the comments. You are in the okay. Another one from Diane Festazian. Barker has 2 houses and 1 on his farm. I think the reference to what I was saying earlier. Let's see, more comments there. Denise Weye, why government officials lavish funds that are meant for the people? Why? That is the question Mr. Coney has to answer. Propo King, this government is the worst ever. The country is going backward instead of improving. So Mr. Coney has some more explaining to do. Dorake Jonathan Sayotai, where is his own opponent? And this is unfortunate. I'm not saying it, man. I'm just Denise Way. I don't see any improvements. Folks are hungry and can't support their families. And Mr. Conning is here saying things are improving. I editorialized the end there. Ashmo Fredericks, George Weah doesn't have to do with the beating. He has other things doing. He has others doing. Passing WIAC is not improvement. The education system and facilities are very poor. Mohammed Yashur.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ahmed. So do we have, in addition to the messages, Henrietta Morgan?
For Henrietta Koda Morgan, Mr. Coney, Liberia is doing great. When are you moving back home with your family so others can be encouraged to follow you?
I asked these people the same question. You know, there was a guy, a brother from New Jersey the other day, Ibrahim Kone, who said, who came at me, he said about, I've always insulted George Weah, he's a vociferous supporter of Weah. And in my head, I'm just, my head was spinning. I'm like, okay, so you're not calling from Monrovia, but you're calling from New Jersey to defend George Weah. I mean, come on, man, that's a nonsense. That should have even been my Tabata of the week. You're not calling from Monrovia, from where George Weah is the president. If you love him so much, and you're sitting here.
Well, and people have been asking Mr. Conning that question as well. Do I think a lot of commenters have said, well, Mr. Conning, when are you going home? Why don't you appear on the show from Monrovia one of these days? When were you there? When
they can't pick on Mr. Coney alone, though. In his defense, I know only me alone know why Mr. Coney is here, and I'll give him a pass on that. So okay. I'm not going to.
And in addition to that, Salif, I was in Monrovia last year. I came back this year. I did a show for Monrovia last year.
I know. Tell them you referenced that in the past. That you
did, but sometimes the internet was not even working.
I did a show for Monrovia last year.
Right, but the internet was.
And to be honest with you, I appreciate our viewers and the comment they make. I really, I'm excited that I'm the kind of magnet for them. I attract them to the show, and that is a good thing. I appreciate their criticism, except that some of the things they say, doesn't even square with the democratic principle we're talking about. I have the right to live where I want to live, and I got the right to support the person I want to support from wherever I want to live. Right. When I say become the requirement that in order for you to support the politician, you must go live to the politician's house. Right. And the funny thing is, you will find the people that are making those same statements are the largest supporters of some other politicians here in America. They say they're in America supporting other politicians. They're not in Liberia. Why are they so keen about me moving to Liberia?
Mr. Kunin, they don't want you to be the armchair anthropologist, the armchair analyst, where you're in the comfort of your home in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You're now burning the frequent flyer miles to Monrovia, jet setting back and forth, so that you have access to first-hand data, information, observable data that you can say, look, I was in West Point, I was in Duke Community, I traveled to Nima, I was in Basel, I was in what Dennis town name, Doloke, what the town name? Yeah, exactly. So where are you gonna say that?
But you know, like I said, I was in Monrovia. I just returned this year, and what I'm saying is the same people that criticize are the most forceful supporters of other politicians. They don't go to the politician they support. You know, it is wouldn't mean that you go back. That's the contradiction. They here raising money. I'm not raising money for anybody. I'm just advocating for the president that I believe in. You know,
Ahmed, you brought up Deduoken. I like how Dennis can be bringing these small towns. these small towns.
No, it's good. It's good. We have to really celebrate where we are from.
So right.
You know.
So yeah. All right. So we do have callers.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Hello, go ahead.
Thank you so very kindly to the panelists, Colin, Sari, Sharif. Thanks so much for the conversation. I mean, that's the kind of things that we should be saying about our country. We can no longer go the other way around with 1989 episodes. We must talk it as much as possible. And so, for those of us who like this kind of environment, but very quickly, let me just state a few things.
Your name, please.
About. My name is Jeneton Tayo Dolake, and that's the name that you see there, Dolake Jeneton Tayo on the Facebook. So, and I'm calling for California. But importantly, I just came to California April 17th. So I've been on the ground all through. So I speak from what's happening on the ground. Firstly, the statement about McGill is not in any context whatsoever. Statement about McGill, it is the truth like confession of what we have been criticizing in 2018 when we took over and started building those condominiums. That is the clear example. And Mr. Connie keeps saying, the man confess about corruption. It is wrong today. It is wrong tomorrow. He would have used, if you were speaking chronologically, you would have said in other manner. But because it is the DNA of this government, they find it pleasurable to talk about corruption in the face of our people or in the faces of our people. Anyhow, this is disturbing, and we must condemn it. If it is a serious government by now, the president will have taken some step again, Mr. McGill. But let me stretch it a little farther again. I listened to Mr. Connie talk about Liberians are not celebrating and different indexes, and we are now looking at where there are rules and things that development are taking place. Look, Mr. Connie, when our officials of government live in a democratic environment, civilized and system-oriented environment, when our officials of government who boast about GFK cannot go to those very medical facility or healthcare facility and travel overseas, it says much about it. When they cannot send their children to the government school or to the schools in Liberia, except to take their children out of the country, it says tons about it. When you have George Weah as a president, who will come on national platform that all Liberians who elected him or women in 40 out of 15 counties and tell them anybody who will cause disturbance in the state or anybody who will insult the president, that person will now walk freely in the street of Liberia, and knowing that if somebody insults him, he cannot be taken to court, neither can he take somebody to court. It tells you that there's a plutocratic government. You don't need further explanation if you read political science well. If Jefferson Kochi will come and say we'll meet protesters in blood and flesh as a public statement, Can you understand how a kleptocratic government works? So when they pass an LSCC law that becomes retroactive on the intent of those who are seated, knowing that they already got on docket people who they should take to account for national resources that official government have bamboozled and pillaged, then you also understand how the kleptocratic government works. When they try to modify what Samuel Doe did, what Charles Taylor did, what the legend leaders did in the past, by not introducing uniform police and uniform soldiers, but instead introducing COP gangs and brutalizing students in the full glare of the public. And they say they were not aware, but our ANC young folks will post on Facebook. The police will take the vehicle and go from Monova straight to Ganta to arrest him and put him behind bar. Or many packets will post and you will go and arrest him. But the person that gang up and have media coverage carrying supers being wet, you will not take action against them. It tells you that it's a kleptocratic government. The way we respond to such government, let me say it to you.
Thank you.
The way we respond to such government is to make sure that 2023 we remove that government. Anything on the contrary, that we will be on his shoulder, like he's on the shoulder of Charles Taylor currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the next caller. Go ahead, caller Aliu.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Great show, Mr. Conan. Thank you very much. You bring fresh spotlight to the show. Great sensation, and I think it seems like you do it on purpose. I really do not think you stand by all of your views. I really think you do this for the purpose of riling up the crowd, and I think you're doing a very good job at it. To defend the legitimacy of $15 million to go in the executive marshal's coffers for the president to use at will, and knowing that LEC is malfunctional because of the lack of resources, knowing that there are no medications in the area health centers. In fact, JFK does not have stable electricity. Mr. Conan, you're fully aware that the police is incapacitated because of mobility and communication. Those little radios that you can get from China or Taiwan to install on motorbikes and in those vehicles and distribute them around the country. Instead, you give motorcycles to ordinary voters instead of the police for the national interest. And Mr. Conner, you're fully cognizant of these things. So I'm fully aware. I believe you. I believe, Mr. Conner, you do these things as a devil advocate. I don't think you stand by some of the things you defend. I don't think you just find pleasure in having most of your viewers coming after you. I think you do it because you want them to come after you. I think this is intentional. But if it is not, then you really need to rethink, because the president's duty is not to influence voters ahead of the election. His primary duty is to protect the country and to provide basic social services, and those include water, health, electricity, and security, for the most part, sanitation to add. And if he ignores these things and takes a barrage of funds for $15 million and distribute them around counties to individuals to vote for him, and you think because it was passed by the legislature and therefore the president is right to use it, I think this is common sense will just tell you that as a president who claims to love the people, a populist, will first of all say, no, this 15 million we can add 5 million to the 5 million we give to the police to provide vehicles for police in different districts and counties. But then we can do more and talk more, but let's give other people the chance to talk. But Mr. Cullen, thank you so much for intentionally making people to come to the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aliu. I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know about
I
that.
can make a response to that because he's, he make a statement with a lot of presumptions. No, I come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's get our callers and then you'll give your response.
That's all we got.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I come to this show. I don't come here to make fun, and I don't come here to pretend. My support for the president is very clear, very strong, very genuine. And things that I believe that this government is doing are things that I believe he's doing. I don't know. the president conducted a nationwide tour and met Liberians of all stripes. And in that process, the president and the people identified things that the people needed. And the president came back and went to the legislature. And the legislature approved these things. And you say, I'm just here to make people get interested in the show. No, I'm telling you something very serious. I'm telling you something very serious.
Well, he has challenged you. He said that's not how to govern, Mr. Cooney. He said the president doesn't go around the country. You don't see other presidents. Joe Biden travels around, comes to Wisconsin. They say, okay, we need a boss here. We need, this way. We need, and then they give him money in the budget and starts to distribute them.
That's not even true. The president travels around the country to get a feel of the country, to see the problem that the people encounter, and to make effort to solve those problems. That is his job.
All right, let's move on from George.
Because the last caller makes a very good point. I really want to make it clear. When I come on this show, I bring my very serious view. I don't
right.
I want to. He's wrong. He's really wrong.
Yeah, the president cannot be, everybody's ATM, and we know the motivation is.
Can we just take the fight to the legislature because if the money was not appropriated, the president will not use it?
Because I know that what we used to hear was Turbo in the Liberian terminology, Turbo was Sabi. Turbo used to give them money. The man too Sabi, the man making farm. These are the kind of things that
the president is undertaking projects that benefit the people. The president is constructing low-cost housing.
Okay.
The president is providing electricity. The president is building roads. He's not giving people money. He's not dishing money out. He's implementing projects.
But McGill is on his behalf. So let's move on.
If I say the president, I go to McGill. I can't be running behind your own what place.
So let's move on. So let's briefly talk about Alexander Cummings. Alexander Cummings also, is someone whom we believe can give George Weah a run for his money in terms of money. I mean, not in terms of the politics, but in terms of money, I think he also has an advantage. And so again, same question. And, fairness to him. Is this an advantage to him? If it is an advantage, why is he not, really at the top, at the top of this, this 2023, this impending 2023 election? Why is he not already, since he's an intellectual, George Weah is not, he has a lot of money, why is he not at the top of the list already? Mr. Cooney. I'll come to Ackman later, but to you, Mr. Cooney.
Again, I don't know Cummings. It is believed in the public there that he's a wealthy man and he sometimes conduct himself that way, that he has money. Frankly, he's failing to break through again. This is why I say about it, we should be very careful in giving money that kind of outsized role. You could have the money, you could have all of the money, but if you're not messaging well, if your vision is not clearly defined, if you're not connecting to voters, your millions will stick in your pocket. Your millions will take you nowhere. So I want to believe that is what is happening to Mr. Cummings. He's not connecting, the message not getting through. He look very desperate. This man, he easily grab any kind of disaffected person. Whether it is Ava Toba that is completely dissatisfied with George Weah because they didn't make him foreign minister, and he picked Ava up, or it is Omer Toga Makito Gawe, who been warming the governor council chairmanship with nothing real to show. He picked anybody up. He's not vetting anybody. Or is whether building alliances with Benena Ure with the hope that he will be nominee. So his desperation is really stunning. So whether he got the money or not, it's not working for him. And before we go on coming, finally, Omer Baga may not, I don't know him to have money, but he got the richest man in Liberia backing him, Benena Ure. I just want us to take that far into consideration.
Ahmed, I think Mr. Coney made a great point there regarding Cummins. I mean, he may have the money.
Oh, well, listen, Mr. Cummins, there are a number of things that are not working for him. I was in Liberia in the 2017 cycle when he first came and made his debut. Liberia, unfortunately, while people are gullible, the society can be very discriminatory at times. We buy into just pettiness and narcissism. The thing about Cummings being a stranger, coming from America, he wants to be president. He doesn't know the country. Those were the narrative that were created around Mr. Cummings. And Mr. Cummings, and he still plays into that today. He runs his campaign in Liberia, Western style, American style. He doesn't understand African politics. He doesn't understand Liberian politics. And when I say that, his people really get wired up and mad at me. But I'm not saying he's not educated, he's not smart, or so on. He doesn't have the right people. Maybe the people need to be trained and tamed down a little bit. But I don't think they've really taken time. So he's been there for going 10 years now or so. So he should be oriented. And so that was going against him early on, that he's strangers new to the country with all the money. And then he played into this tokenism, this sort of, just dishing out money. That's the system, right? Of course, and I reckon now on the one hand, I say he doesn't understand the politics, but it's also people behind him and encouraging him, do this, build this school here, build this little school, keynote speaker here, and then you donate there, do these little things and just dish out money, and some of that is happening, but he's not resonating. He, at least to that point, he wasn't, and now there's a lot of support for him in the diaspora. Hopefully some of that will translate to actual support in country. Politics, I've always said on this platform, is about winning hearts and minds, strategy, vision that resonates, because politics is in context. When they say all politics is local, that's what it means. That's what Mark Twain was talking about. It means that you have to really understand the context, design your strategy, your manifesto, your doctrine, your political doctrine, align it with the needs of the people, so that you can ginger your base, wire them up to get excited about you, and then they will project that message. I think that Mr. Cummings has struggled to do that a little bit, and so his money, his wealth. Of course, I don't personally know his financial position, but again, public projection. You see why we're not saying he's corrupt? Because we know supposedly knows the source of his income, right? He's a Wall Street guy. Coca-Cola must have been investing in these corporate bulls. He must have big, rich friends. He must have influence in the West. He gets, he raises his funds. He comes to America, he raises his funds. He goes to Liberia, spends it like all these politicians. And so at least we can justify his sources of funds that are not nefarious. And so we can say whether he lives a affluent lifestyle or not, as a public individual who now is in the public, it's okay. That's his money, right? The only thing I'm saying, if there's campaign finance law and there's regulation, some of that has to be regulated in place. And they have to message well. They have to really understand the problems and go after solutions, very practical solutions. Make the voters see that. Make the Liberian people see that. Get them excited. If you are wealthy in a poor country, and if that's, somebody says money talks and you just give money and people will follow you, he should be at the top of the political food chain right now. But unfortunately, he's not. He's still struggling.
Thank you very much.
Hiring is very poor.
His what?
His hiring decision. Very poor.
Yeah. And that's something that also speaks to not just him. George Weah also. George Weah has not had any reshuffle since he got into office. I mean, this is the first time I've seen a president stay in the executive mansion all these years later, and there's no one reshuffle. It's stunning, in the midst of all these incompetent people. And so, yeah, so actually there is in chapter 7 of the election law of Liberia, it says no candidate or political party shall use a state resource in an election campaign or in preparation for an election campaign, except a state resource that is made available to all candidates and political parties for the election, or is generally available to the public and is provided on the same terms as to the public, among others. So that is the law. But somehow, some way, this law is not enforced. Nobody is talking about it. So the government goes ahead and use these resources, I mean, whatever way they want to. And the Elections Commission does nothing about it. And that is our Liberia. Folks, if you're just joining us, this is Tough Talking Thursday. Today we're talking about money, big money. What will big money do in the 2023 elections? And this has been a very fascinating discussion on the impact of money. We've also talked about the campaign laws of Liberia. Maybe a lot of people are not aware, but there are laws on the books that govern the conduct of Liberian elections when it comes to resources, how resources are expended. And so at this time, let's quickly go around and, in about a minute or so and talk about the last candidate, and that's Tiawan Gonglo. Gonglo has a message, many will agree, right? But he has no money. And so many believe that Gonglo is not going to go far because of his lack of resources. Ahmed, do you think that is the case with Gonglo? His message is good, but he has no resources to sell this very good message. So what does he do? He's in a bind.
No, it's not necessarily in the bind. I think that Gonglo is an issues candidate. Gonglo is an integrity candidate. Some of what we've really been talking about, these writ large issues of democracy, of governance, how to really focus on the people, focus on the country, and not self, because that thing Paul Weston used to say in Minnesota, you do well, and we do well when we do well. That's kind of Gonglo's message. And, a candidate may not themselves be a wealthy person. However, if that message resonates, if that message is able to galvanize a team of successful wealthy people, let me tell you, Gonglo is from Nimba County. And the Nimba people are among some of the most educated, successful people we have in Liberia in the diaspora. I can tell you for free. And these people are very passionate about their own. I've seen Mr. Gonglo travel around the U.S. He's raised funds. He's raised some eyebrows. So I'm not going to underrate him. I'm not going to underestimate him. Of course, I've had some problems. Not problems necessarily. I've pointed out to him, to his people around him sometimes, that, okay, you came in the game kind of late. Now you're there. You don't have a lot of window to make errors. You have to, your hiring decisions, your messaging, your projecting, your signaling, all of you really have to be on top of your game. And I think you've had some missteps. As a result, traction has suffered. And this whole perception about poverty, him not having money in the coffers in the bank too, is something that you could start shooting down. If you have a very good campaign strategy and people around you, you could start shooting that down. You see, you still listen, I don't have money, but I have Corning, who is a wealthy man behind me. I have this other guy who's listen, I can run the campaign. What's important is that the National Elections Commission's guidelines, the regulation, the requirements, I've met everything. I can meet everything. I see you on the campaign trail. See if I don't have money. That's the kind of messaging I will be pushing for Gonglo. But they're not having traction there. The perception continues to persist, and it's a problem because in Liberia, people are gullible. There's this thing about you're poor, then you won't be president. You even get nothing president, then you won't be president, right? So you got to shoot that down. You have to address that. If you don't address that, your ambition could die a premature death.
Mr. Coney, just briefly, just under a minute. So, Gonglo, what do you think he should be doing right now in order to be competitive with the CDC, the Unity Party, and other competitors?
Well, Councillor Gonglo is one of the great icons of the progressive movement. He knows how to articulate. He knows what he believes in. My advice for him is that he should continue to do what he's doing. Even though I know with his, but I don't, in politics, I don't underwrite people. I don't underwrite my opponent. That's why my optimism about winning. But I think you should find all of your opponent worthy of the competition, and then you set yourself out to win. So in politics, weeks can be anything. We're talking about an election that is 1 year away from now. A lot of things can happen. But despite all of that, I still remain firm that the election come 2023 is George Weah to lose. I don't see, anybody winning president.
Thank you, Mr. Coney. So at this time, we will go to our Tabata session and then our final comment. So I guess we can, combine both. And then, so what is it now? We've been for an hour and 50 minutes. So we'll just take 3 minutes each for that, for the Tabata session and the final thought. So I want to start with Ahmed. What is your Tabata? And after that, you can give your final thought. So it'll be 3 minutes.
My Tabata has to be that so this young man, maybe there's been several tough talking Thursdays since that happened. I was on the show, but I will have to come back to it. This Walter Cicillo student kid who was assaulted, who was mobbed and beaten and brutalized, a Liberian citizen who was just expressing his constitutional right. The Tabata is not that happened, that he was abused, assaulted. The Tabata is that it took the president several days, after all kinds of public outcries, public condemnations, before the president spoke. And when the president spoke, the president, if I were a politician, would distance himself, right? So he distanced himself from the CDC COP. But it's an open secret. The videos, the clips that were out there, the CDC COP actually was seemingly endorsed as one of the youth wing elements of the CDC, right? And the president distanced himself from them. And it's okay. To his credit, you distance himself from the violence, from the behavior, and and he denounced that. I applaud him for that. That's what a leader should do. But I think the problem that I'm considering as a Tabata, these are elements in your party. This militancy that everybody is a comrade, this, everybody's general, this is wearing beret and they're speaking militant language and so on. That ethos, that sort of violent ethos, ransack mentality in the CDC and the president, the political leaders, they have to address that in that party. And so to just because an action of elements of that party as attracted public condemnation, international condemnation, potential human rights crimes, and now you distance yourself from that. I think that is just the the surface, scratching the surface of the problem. So the leadership, the president, the Malu, and the political people of the CDC, they really have to look at that youth aspect. My closing comments will have to be, political campaigns are an important element of the democratic process. And democratic process because democracy, elections are a cardinal element of democracy that define leadership, that give legitimacy to leaders we elect. And therefore, these leaders then we give them mandate to govern based on their platforms, based on their manifestos, whatever their political mantra is, that messaging is bring to the people. And so these are serious questions that we are grappling with here. These are serious topics, right? Inundating a election environment, campaign environment with public funds, ill-gotten funds, or even just not regulating, not creating an opportunity for competition. Mr. Conning talks all the time about this. Oh, they don't want to compete. That the people compete. There is a competition. Yes, but the legislature you're speaking of.
I mean, you got 30 seconds.
Yeah, there could be a rubber stamp legislature. They've been accused of that. So there are all kinds of problems there. I'm not trying to re-legislate this question. My bigger point is political corruption is not good for our country. Just bamboozle your way, use cash violence and cash that not even your own personal cash. In a lot of instances, I think that's bad. Whoever does it, it's not right. That's not taking our country anywhere. So we're all here because we care about Liberia.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Mr. Conning.
Well, my Tabata really is this new haven that the opposition has now discovered. And that haven is Italy. Every opposition leader now is going to Italy. I mean, what is occurring in Italy is something that I really don't understand. And I mean, the way they are so proud when they come from Italy. The first person to make that trip was Mr. Cummings. It's like the man was coming from, I don't know, maybe from a state visit. Then now, the Ambassador Boyka, comes from Italy. It's now big news. How Italy now has become a validating point for Liberian opposition leaders is something that bothers me. It really don't bother me, but it's funny that you will go to a little country like Italy to go seek validation as to say that something that is going on. I think it's the biggest tabata. The Unity Party held their convention. You would think that the party will come from that convention with more energy. It went to coma. And the only thing we hear after the convention is that the standard bearer just returned from Italy. I think that's the big political tabata. With regard to the topic that we discussed here today, some of us, people want to understand us the way they want to understand us. So when we give a position, because they already have a predetermined box that they want to put us, they say we're talking differently. I oppose corruption, I oppose corruption. It's that simple. People that are corrupt are not my friends. I've never been corrupt. I serve the public, never been corrupt. I support asset justification. Public officials must justify their assets. I want to believe that one way we can make our public service fairer and make it more efficient. I support a declaration of assets. These are long-held views that I've supported. The impact of money in politics, yes, I can see that money may play a role in politics. Money can play a role in politics, but there are other things too that influence campaign. And I've demonstrated here tonight instances where money failed, elections where money failed. And so in as much as money is important, I believe that if a political party, if a candidate do what they're supposed to do, message the way they're supposed to message, just like in the case of Darius Dillon and other candidates, there shouldn't be a way that they cannot effectively compete. The reason why I'm laying emphasis on this point is that we are heading to a dangerous trajectory, a trajectory that will call for conditions, unrealistic conditions, so that when those conditions are not met, we say, oh, the election is not free and fair. Mind you, it is in that environment we've been conducting all of our elections. It is in that environment that we've been conducting all of our elections.
You got 1 minute.
Now that we are going to elections, some people now want to move the goalposts so that it can increase their space to cry foul. But let us admit that is the environment that we conduct the elections. I mean, if we have to reform that, we have to reform that. But reformation doesn't come overnight. You know, it is a collective responsibility. Not only the president will do, but the Liberian people, the politicians, interest group, civil society, the legislature. We have to fight to make our system fairer. We shouldn't be fighting to be funny excuses when we are defeated. But when we win, even though all of the things we say that we claim the victory, we don't talk about the system no more. So I think that's the danger that lies ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cooney. With that, we have come to the end of a fascinating discussion on the impact of money in our political environment. And so I want to thank our viewers very, very much for tuning in. I want to thank all of those who have continued to follow us and who have continued to support us. Thank you for watching. Whether you are a seditious, whether you believe in the one-round theory, whether you are a unity partisan, ANC partisan, PLP partisan, or just mere independent like myself in the political space.
Or intelligentsia elite.
Or the
elite,
right? Oh my God. I didn't hear that tonight. I didn't hear
the elite intelligentsia.
Oh my God. Thank God I didn't hear it tonight. All right. So we're all Liberians, regardless. My name is Mohammed Sharif. I have been sitting in for Dennis Jah. Now, I forgot I didn't do my tabata. I think mine is more related to Ahmed, but not the same. I don't know why the police waited all this time for the president to tell them to do their job. That is my tabata. So with that, I want to thank you all. I want to thank my panelists, and farewell and so long.
We are Liberians.